In India, where the memories of the survivors' culture are still relatively strong, we see the main symbol of the survivors, the swastika, literally at every step. The embroideries of the traditional outfits of the Slavic people are literally made of countless small swastikas. Swastika symbol is found on many Native American artifacts, on their blankets, designs, outfits, everywhere. The last waves of survivors that came to the American continents did that few hundred years ago, and they brought the symbol of the swastika, the symbol of harmony, good luck, beauty, and fortune with themselves, and it was widely used in their daily life up until some maybe 100 years ago when it was abandoned along with all the other moral values that the survivors brought with themselves. Various sports teams and other organizations like the Boy Scouts used to use it as their emblem.
swastika is synonymous in the West with fascism, and its powerful association with hate, pain, and fear runs deep. But this negative connection is only relatively recent, as the swastika is found across all continents, and is seen in all religions and traditions, as it is one of Earth's oldest sacred symbols representing good fortune, peace and light.
In Finland, the swastika is one of the state symbols till nowadays. In Russia, it was always one of the main state symbols even in ancient times, and continues to be so even in the very recent past. It was all over the Russian money, the banknotes, and all over their historic artifacts as well. Kinds of governmental, regional and other symbols and stamps and everything else bear the sign of swastika in Russia.
And the swastika is not alone. Countless so-called anomalies are found across the Earth, which don't fit today's version of mainstream history. These include ancient artifacts, artworks, architecture and chronicles from across the world, which indicate our ancestors lived very different lives in the past from that which mainstream history tells us. Many accept that today's dating of historical events undoubtedly have some errors, but to what scale? History, as we understand it today, was created and finalised during the 1600s, and Scaligerian chronology, the framework on which our mainstream timeline rests, is still the backbone of many historical dating systems such as archaeological dating today. Our modern concept of medieval and ancient history begins in Europe in around 1580, with a series of fundamental works by Joseph Scaliger, a French religious leader. These works were then expanded on in 1630 by Denis Pateau, a French Jesuit theologian, Both men had a worship-like protectiveness over the biblical texts, scroll remnants and calendars they had inherited, and took it upon themselves to bring chronology to perfection, with absolutely precise dating, quoting the year, month, day, and sometimes even time of day for all the principal events in all of humankind's history. In 1583, Scaliger wrote Study on the Improvement of Time, which was a study of earlier calendars. In it he compared the calculations of time that had been done by various civilizations in antiquity and corrected what he considered to be their errors. Scaliger and Petau's groundwork showed the ancient chronology as a table of dates which were presented without any reasons given, as they were based on religious records in which both men had absolute faith. Scaliger, for instance, could not even conceive of such heresy as running a check on the chronology of the Holy Fathers. Indeed, he regarded the works of earlier biblical scholars, such as the Roman historian and Christian scholar Eusebius, as divine. It is true to say, the origins of modern historical dating rests in the bosom of the Catholic Church. Both Scaliger and Petau were supposedly the first to utilize astronomical dating techniques to prove their version of history, but they failed to use this method to critically analyze their information, only when it supported what they believed to be true. Nevertheless, Scaliger is regarded today as the father of the science of chronology and is considered to have placed chronology on a solidly scientific basis. Due to this scientific veneer, the Scaligerian version of ancient and medieval history went largely unquestioned before the 17th and 18th centuries. Even so, over the decades, many great scientists have criticised his timeline. For instance, Sir Isaac Newton wrote several books on the subject and concluded that both ancient Greece and Egypt had been artificially shifted back in time by a considerable amount. In the case of ancient Egypt, he found it had been placed well over 1,000 years back on the timeline from when it had actually occurred. Another well-respected British scientist, Edward Johnson, wrote, "We are a lot closer to the Greeks and Romans than we are told from the chronological tables, and called for a full revision of the entire chronology of both ancient and medieval history." But it was not until eminent Russian scientist and revolutionary Nikolai Morozov's work between 1907 and 1932 when a clearer picture of the scale of historical fabrication began to emerge. Morozov was working at the University of St. Petersburg, lecturing in chemistry and astronomy, when he formulated his method for chronological analysis, which was based on astronomical records of lunar eclipses. Using this system, it became clearly apparent to Morozov that much of both ancient and medieval history had been falsified on a global scale. Then, in 1973, Anthony Fomenko, a young Russian mathematician from the University of Moscow, revisited Morozov's work and decided this area required further research.
2, 1, 0.
Fomenko had read the American astrophysicist Robert Newton's calculations on lunar motion, which showed a seemingly impossible leap between 700 and 1000 AD, when looked at using the accepted historical dating system. Although still a mystery officially, this so-called anomaly was decided to have been caused by some kind of mysterious extra-gravitational forces. The idea of questioning the historical dating system had not been considered, but the mathematician in Fomenko was not convinced by the solution and began to look further into datings of ancient lunar eclipses. He utilised both Newton's calculations and Morozov's eclipse tables, and in so doing, Fomenko discovered the anomaly had gone, a clear indication that there was something seriously wrong with the accepted chronology's timeline of historical events. After more than 40 years of research using statistical and mathematical analysis of original ancient sources, Fomenko found that not only the timing of events, but the events themselves had been distorted, and that many supposed dynasties were in fact identical duplicates of each other, spanning over gaps of 300 years or more. Among other eye-opening discoveries, Fomenko and his colleagues were able to show how ancient civilizations such as Rome, Greece and Egypt had occurred much nearer to our time, during what we call the medieval period, and that the Dark Ages were a complete fabrication of time that never existed, apart from in the historical interpretations of Scaligerian chronology. Moreover, importantly, these supposed ancient civilizations were not individual military empires with warring peoples that mainstream history would have us believe. In fact, all indications are of a generally peaceful and fair global civilization, remnants of which still existed up until only a few hundred years ago. Ancient empires as we know them were in fact in essence one in the same and all part of a global united empire. It was a culture that existed to serve the people. It functioned as an institution for trade coordination. It upheld human rights and was a civilization that did not treat people as slaves. The ancient ruins of Greece are just one example of the architecture which was being built across the earth as part of one united culture. The Mediterranean is not the cradle of our civilization, but was part of a much older global culture. Traditions from many nations have preserved information of our heritage, and by comparing ancient chronicles, geological records, and thousands of archaeological artifacts which don't apparently fit into mainstream history, we can gain valuable insights into our true past. Scientists such as Russian geologist Alexander Holtopin utilize such techniques. Their research indicates that around 12,000 years ago, the final waves of survivors arrived to safety from a civilization far more advanced than our own is today. These were people whose understanding of the earth and space were phenomenal. They came from a culture where they knew how everything around us truly functions. Their religion was a universal knowledge, oneness and truth. Blind faith had no place in their world, as truth was abundant and accessible to all. The survivors had travelled from multiple centres around the world, as much of their land had been submerged by oceans. Over time they had spread across the earth, bringing with them their advanced knowledge, culture and sacred geometric symbolism, the keys to the working of the universe. The survivors shared their culture with tribes they came into contact with, and although in a greatly diluted form, much of their knowledge was passed on. Today, their influence can be seen across the world in art, architecture, customs and spirituality, especially in such places as India and in Native American Indian culture. The swastika is one of the most important original sacred symbols of the Empire of the Survivors. Although many symbols belonging to the survivor culture are still used today widely across the earth, the Christian cross, the Islamic star and crescent, the Jewish Star of David, and many more are sacred survivor symbols that once universally represented a united spirituality based on truth and old wisdom which was once widely understood.
Whoa! What? Loss irreparable to mankind.
What's happened, man?
The fire has spread from your ships. The library of Alexandria is in flames. What is burning there is the memory of mankind.
A shameful memory. Let it burn.
Would you destroy the past?
Aye, and build the future with its ruins.
Distorting the story of how our ancestors lived in a peaceful and cooperative empire has negatively affected society immeasurably. So many disastrous misunderstandings are born from false history which still affects us today. We have learnt for generations how empires always rule, how we have always been ruled, and that humans are naturally war-loving. In fact, the reality is that not so long ago, our ancestors were part of an open, fair and cooperative worldwide culture which was spread across the whole earth.
Der Tag,
The Nazi obsession with the recreation of the Aryan race and the resurrection of an old imperialistic empire is a prime example of what damage a fictional history can have on future events. The attempted recreation of the Nazi ideal of an old empire which never actually existed would have unlikely been socially accepted if the truth about our past and the empire of the survivors had been known to the public. The truth that in our recent past we, as a people, had formed a united and cooperative empire without imperialistic indoctrination, the hate propaganda simply could not have worked as it did. We face grave problems today, but with a new awareness we can see how much of these still have their foundations in what we have been told our past represents, and what it makes us become. We are told we come from aggressive apes, are the most developed we have ever been, and that humans are war-loving and unable to self-organise. We now generally accept slavery as part of our everyday life through the monetary system, with virtually all of us are debt slaves, and if not, our country most certainly is. The global cooperative of the survivors' empire bears little resemblance to our version of empire. It served the people, encouraged free trade and honoured spiritual harmony, unlike our current system. In comparison to our forebears, we live in a candid-coated, debt-slave existence, an industrialised prison complex with invisible boundaries everywhere. But we believe in it. Oh, look back in history, we've never managed to do any better, have we? Let us start to believe in the real world, the one our ancestors would want us to inherit, one where the invisible boundaries of lies and entrapment fades, as we, the people of Earth, once again remember who we really are, what we are capable of.